Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first Like a Boss event of 2021. I'm Courtney Spencer, Vice President of Advertising for the Portland Press Herald. Today, Press Herald publisher and CEO Lisa DeSisto will sit down with Jay Mazelsky, President and CEO of Idex. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors for their support. They make this programming possible. Thank you to Bernstein Schur, Hub International, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, JP Morgan Chase, Vistage, and Coffee by Design. Here to say a few words is Joan Fortin, President and CEO of Bernstein Schur. The floor is yours, Joan.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here today to kick off this latest season for Like a Boss. We are so proud to sponsor this series, and I am personally grateful to Lisa DeSisto and the Portland Press Herald for creating this program and hosting these valuable conversations with leaders from all over the state of Maine. I have to say, as I was looking at the notes in the chat just now, I love it that as we've moved to the virtual world, we're not limited just to the people who can join us for coffee in the morning in Portland, but people are logging in from all over the country and outside of the country. And I think that's really wonderful that we can come together in this way. For years now, Bernstein Schur has been collaborating with Idex on our summer associate program, which is a way in which we train and host young budding lawyers. In the context of that program, I've received tours of the Idex facility, and I've had the opportunity to gain some insight firsthand into the sophisticated and groundbreaking work that Idex performs every day, along with the extremely positive culture it's created for its employees. Those are not easy things to maintain during an ongoing pandemic. With this in mind, I'm really eager today to hear how Jay and Idex have learned, adapted, and pursued growth during these ever-changing and challenging times that we're in. I'm excited to hear what's ahead. And Lisa, thank you again, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joan. And now we'll turn things over to Lisa DeSisto and Jay Mazelsky.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Joan. Thank you to Bernstein Schur for supporting Like a Boss again here in 2021, which I can't believe it's 2021, but it is. So I hope we find you all safe and healthy today on this sunny Friday. And as Joan mentioned, a small silver lining in bringing this online is that we can actually accommodate so many more people to hear from Jay. And so with that, Jay, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you, Courtney and Joan, and Lisa. Nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you as well. And just so everyone knows, you were on a sun porch at your house, correct? You're not outside, because it does look like you're outside.
I am not outside. We took the screened-in porch and we put some windows up, and it's now a sun porch, and it's heated, and I'm very comfortable.
It looks like a wonderful place to read the Portland Press Herald every day.
Thank you, it is.
Okay, so we got a sense from the video of what Idex does, but why don't you give us a little bit more description before we dive into the J story? And my favorite copy in the video was our home state of Maine. We are just so thankful to have Idex here.
Well, thank you. Idex is a global leader in veterinary diagnostics, veterinary practice software, and water microbiology testing. So when you sit down with your family tonight for dinner, and depending upon what you're having for the meal, if it's chicken or beef, drinking milk or water, chances are that somewhere along the food chain that meal has been tested with Agilent Technologies. We're a global company, but we're headquartered here in Maine. We were started in Maine, so we were incorporated back in 1983. And since that time, we've grown extensively. Almost 40% of our sales come from outside of the US. We have 9,000 employees. About 3,000 or so of those employees live here in Southern Maine. We're headquartered in Westbrook, just down the road. And we're very proud to say that we did the majority of our design and development and manufacturing of our products right here in Maine.
Wow, that is fantastic. And it's so great to hear about manufacturing in Maine, right? So, and to know that the work is, that it is all happening here. And the Westbrook campus seems to be, you know, an enviable place to work, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And let's start with how you got here. And I don't know the answer to this question, but where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Western Pennsylvania at a time when it was better known for steel mills and polluted rivers. I'm one of 4 children, middle-class background, grew up in a 3-bedroom house. And I just remember fond memories of growing up, very typical childhood. I remember my parents always emphasizing education and work.
Yeah, yeah. And then also speaking of work, what was your first paying job?
Well, you'll love this, Lisa. Actually, my first paying job was delivering the morning newspaper, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but used to have these canvas bags and you would put over your shoulder and the newspaper would assign you a neighborhood route. And I'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning and deliver papers. And then on Saturday, you'd collect for the paper and you'd get to talk to the neighbors and they were generally very complimentary of the service, but they also weren't shy to let you know when you missed the paper was wet. And it's a great, great experience, great chance to learn business firsthand as an 11-year-old.
Well, so I didn't know that. So most times going into these interviews, I know exactly what everyone's first job was. So when you told me I was going to be excited about it, you were right. And I think that's what's made you so successful today, which I didn't know, but now I'm putting all of the pieces together. And I do want you to know we have some routes open. So if you want a side hustle, let me know. That is so great. Okay, so then after you gave up your newspaper delivery career, you went to college. So talk about your educational background.
Sure. So I went to the University of Rochester to study mathematics, and it's a well-known school for engineering and STEM type disciplines. It sits right on Lake Ontario. So if you're familiar with the Great Lakes and the lake effect, it's also known for having these underground tunnels that connect dorm rooms to classrooms. So even when we would get our 2 or 3 feet of snow, which was pretty common back then, you never missed class.
Well, we could probably use a few more underground tunnels in Maine, I guess, then for that reason. And then you went on to graduate school?
Well, I went through the NROTC program at the University of Rochester. So upon graduation, I was commissioned as an officer in the Navy, and I was stationed at a Newport, Rhode Island, on an anti-submarine warfare ship for 4 years, and then had this abiding interest in business and wanted to pursue a career in business. So I ended up going to graduate school at the University of Chicago to get an MBA.
And then you went into the professional workforce. So what was your entry point?
Sure. So upon graduation, I joined Hewlett Packard in the medical device field out of Boston. And most folks today probably think of Hewlett Packard as a computer and printing company. But when I joined them, they were known for their test and measurement and chemical analysis and medical device business. It was the original Silicon Valley startup. In fact, it got started during the Great Depression when Dave Packard and Bill Hewlett sold test and measurement equipment to Disney in like 1939, something like that. But yeah, I joined them, and learned a lot about management and something that a lot of people know about the HP way, which puts the respect for the individual at the center of sort of the company culture.
And then to Philips Healthcare, is that right?
Well, I had a successive number. I was at Hewlett Packard for 11 years or so, a number of different jobs and different functions, including a stint overseas. But HP, as the computing business grew, decided they were going to spin off the type of analytical and test and measurement businesses I described into Agilent. And then Agilent 2 years later sold the medical business to Philips. And that's where I spent 10 or 11 years before coming to Idex.
So how did Idex get on your radar screen?
I was recruited. I had known about Idex just at a very high level from a reputation standpoint and being a leader in diagnostics and in the animal health space. But I was recruited and went through interview process and talked to the senior executives at the company and did a lot of homework myself because it was a big career change. And the more I looked at the company and the more sort of I studied their strategy and what they were gonna, all the opportunity still before us, I said, wow, this is an amazing company. And I was offered a job and jumped at it.
Mhm. And what was your first position that you came into IDEX as?
So it was an executive vice president position with a hybrid set of responsibilities, managing a portfolio that included the North American commercial organization, as well as a number of the businesses at the company.
And had you been to Maine before you came here to interview?
Well, we spent about 15 years or so in Boston. So we would take, family and I would take day trips and knew a little bit about the Portland area, but not extensively, not for any real period of time.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to some CEOs before that have come here for the first time and have been a little bit shocked by the cold, but University of Rochester, you were ready for it. So
Yeah, I seem to have migrated to places north in cold. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
no big change there.
Nope, it's all about layering. You've been at IDEX 7.5 years or 8. Help me.
Little over 8 years at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when Jonathan Ayers had his accident, you became the interim CEO. Describe, that process that had to be very difficult for the company at that time.
Sure. I mean, we were all shocked and very concerned for John and his family. John had built a wonderful business over a period of 17 years that was very successful, was growing, very committed leadership team and workforce. So just like in personal life, sometimes in professional life, you compartmentalize and we focused on continuing to execute the strategy and serve our customers. And I felt blessed to be in a position where I could help the company at a time when they needed somebody to lead it.
And so, so you were interim CEO for maybe 4 months until you were appointed, and the appointment happens how?
Yeah, so it was a 4-month period, and the board hires the CEO, and they go through an extensive interview process. I had known obviously a lot about the company and the strategy, and about in October of 2019, they had offered me the job, and I was thrilled by the opportunity to lead the company, and I took it.
So not much time from your appointment till then we go into COVID, maybe 4 or 5 months, right?
That's right. Yeah, they come at you fast and furious.
They do. Okay, so I will start to work in some questions that we got in advance from our attendees. So this one comes from Jessica Roy, and it says, it's been more than a year since you became CEO. What were your key learnings as a new CEO? And what are the key differences from your previous position?
So nothing really prepares you for the job except by doing it. I probably didn't know that, going into it. There's a saying that it's more than a job, it's really a lifestyle. And I think that that's certainly the case because there's no start and stop. It's just, continuous. And the job is in many respects very different from what I was doing, in that there's a different set of stakeholders and constituencies, like the board you're dealing with, investors who are the owners of the company. You obviously are dealing with, the buck stops with you, so that there are decisions that only come to your level, that only you can make in terms of direction setting and enterprise level decision making. On the other hand, there are things that I was involved with at my former role, that involving strategy and talent development and commercial initiatives that you still do as a CEO, but you do it with a different level of intensity and involvement, depending upon what it is.
Mm-hmm. So, as I mentioned, you didn't have a long time from becoming CEO to then having to manage through a pandemic. So let's spend a few minutes talking about, so what is the current state of operations at IDEX during the pandemic?
Sure. So we have about 70% of our employees, this is globally, working from home, and about 30% of the employees are actually working on site because that's where their job is. And so these are folks in the testing laboratories, production, distribution, those sort of things. When the pandemic hit, for real, back late February or March, I think like a lot of businesses, we didn't know how long it was going to be with us, how deep it was going to go, how it would affect our customers. And we put in place a framework as a company that would help us guide, they're guiding principles, if you will, but they involve first and foremost, keeping our employees and facilities safe, recognizing that about 30% of the workforce needed to be on site. Also, our customers as caregivers, as doctors, were declared essential businesses pretty much all over the world and delivering essential services. So they needed to be kept supplied with our testing equipment. And we wanted to make sure that we could do that all the way from the thousands of vendors we work with to delivering to the customers who actually end customers, the veterinarian who uses those supplies. And then the third pillar of that framework was staying healthy as a company, financially healthy, recognizing that there's going to be a future. And we wanted to make sure that we continue to invest strategically in the company and our workforce, that is something that we value, that we've invested in for years, in some cases decades, and didn't want to have to lay people off. And then fourthly, we knew at some point our customers would want to and would be recovering, and we wanted to be able to recover together with them. What you find is that veterinarians have exceptionally long memories. And so when they need you and you're there for them, they remember that.
Yeah, yeah. So people and their pets during the pandemic, how did that impact your business? And how do you think the dogs and cats are feeling? Are they like, when are these people going back to work? What's going on?
Yeah, so pets have never been, I think, more important to all of us as a result of the pandemic. We rely on them for companionship. There's, I think, a sense of social disconnectedness, fun. I know my dog drags me out into the cold to get some exercise every once in a while. So I think it's been helpful for the business in a sense of all of us that are home notice that your dog may be limping, or he seems to be scratching more and has allergies, and you end up taking your pet to the veterinarian. So from that standpoint, I think that we're probably more attentive to our loved ones, our furry loved ones, and taking them to the vet, and that's good for our business.
Yeah, and I just know from our colleagues at the Press Herald, a lot of people got pandemic puppies and cats. So I think a lot of people became new pet owners during the pandemic. That seemed to be a thing. I have a question from Kathy Foley. She wanted to know, how has COVID impacted hiring? So what challenges has it brought to bring new people on?
So like a lot of companies, when COVID hit, we hit the pause button and wanted to just understand how long this was going to be with us and how deep it was going to go. And that probably lasted 3 or 4 months or so. And we began rehiring with some level of cautiousness after that, really focusing on those positions we needed for production and the testing laboratories that were directly linked to end customer demand. And then more recently, we've really continued to hire in our parts of the business, but again, through a cautious lens, not knowing how long this is going to be with us.
Yeah, I wanted to say to all of our attendees that if you have questions for Jay, you can pop them into the Q&A and we will get to as many as we possibly can, because it's really hard for us to pick them out of the chat. But I did just see one pop up in the chat that said, what's it going to look like post-COVID for your return to office space? I know we get that question all the time from our employees and are looking to introduce more flexibility. Have you guys considered that yet?
Yeah, we certainly are. I think a lot of employees have enjoyed working remotely. They have found it in some cases to be more productive. They obviously miss their colleagues, and so we're looking at various hybrid models where you might work from home and also in the office, depending upon the position. And so we have a team investigating that, and they're going to come back with a set of recommendations.
Mm-hmm. And for you personally, I mean, I assume that you did a fair amount of travel pre-pandemic, so you're obviously have been grounded. How has it changed your regular routine?
Well, my family loves it because this time of year I'm on the road pretty much 70% of the time. So I'm working, remotely and very infrequently in the office. But I found with the technology that it could be very productive. I've had town halls with thousands of employees at the time. So you have tools now that I think none of us had or really availed ourselves of a couple of years ago. So it's from that standpoint, it's been quite productive. I do miss walking in our facility and running into somebody at the coffee pot and catching up, and those sort of spontaneous conversations that you learn a lot about what's going on in the business. So I'm not getting those.
Yeah, it's hard to do that across Zoom. Although as a global company, I assume you had a lot of the communication tools already in place.
We did. Our IT group are rock stars. So they did a fabulous job of putting in place the infrastructure and tools really over the last couple of years. So when we decided to work remotely, it was pretty much flipping a switch, and we seamlessly were able to move into this mode and continue running the business as if nothing had stopped.
All right, let's flip over to talk about your kind of leadership principles and the culture at Idex that just has you have a wonderful reputation as an employer here in Maine. So a question from Timothy Davidson said, Idex has a great record of innovation and an excellent reputation as an employer. Can you talk about the workplace culture that your team has created to encourage and sustain these qualities?
Sure. Culture is incredibly important to us as a company. I think it's either a rocket fuel for success and growth, or it can really be a headwind if the organization's not aligned. So it's something we pay a lot of attention to. It's a very famous management consultant, Peter Drucker, who has since deceased. But Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, or at least he was attributed with saying that. And whether you agree with that or not, his bigger point was you can have a great strategy, but trying to execute that and get that done is really hard if everyone has a different value set and set of behavior. So at Idex, it starts with, we're purpose-driven as a company. So we write down our purpose to enhance the health and well-being of pets, people, and livestock. And then we have a set of guiding principles that we abide by that speak to the market and customers and entrepreneurship and the importance of rewarding and recognizing employees and contributing to the community. And they guide our actions, and we use them to check what we're doing. And so it's an integrated system that gets a lot of attention and buy-in. And plus, we benefit as a purpose-driven company that everybody knows what they do at Idex and what we do, which is to help our pets and companion animals, amongst other things. So there's no question about why we exist as a company and what our mission is.
And do you ever change those six, because it's six guiding principles, right?
Guiding principles,
do they ever get changed at all, or do you you're really dedicated to them and they've been there for years?
Well, we've had them for, I guess, 14 or 15 years at this point. So we would, we revisit them on an ongoing basis and say, do they still fit? How do you update them if they don't fit, or we want to enhance them in some way? But I think they've been pretty spot on in terms of how we think about the company.
I will tell you, we're in the process of updating our values at Masthead, Maine, and we've been using your page on your website with your values. So we're just replacing pets for readers. So they really are just a solid foundation of your culture. Could you give one or two examples of how those principles look in action?
Sure. So let me give you an example with the human COVID-19 testing that we rolled out in partnership with the state of Maine and some other government entities. So just a great example of the team. We all obviously live in our local communities, and we're very aware of the ravages of COVID-19 and the lack of testing capacity. I'm back to sort of the March, April timeframe. And a team said, I think we can do something about this. We know how to do testing. We know how to do PCR testing. We have equipment and capability. Let's do something about that. And so from conception to actual rollout and delivery was 2 months. 2 months. It was a cross-functional team. It was organically sort of bubbled up through the organization. It involved many of our guiding principles, which is cultivating entrepreneurship, contributing to our communities, innovating with intelligence, and it's teamwork. It's a great example of how we as an organization move quickly and move impactfully when we're aligned around a purpose.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, because when you have these values and then to actually see them in practice, they're not, they're not just a page on your website. They really are what drives your actions every day. So while I was trolling you on LinkedIn, I found 2 endorsements from 2 former colleagues who praise your keen ability to manage highly complex projects. Now, this was before I knew that you were a newspaper carrier, so I understand why you have so much expertise at it, but how do you tackle them and why are you so good at this?
Well, it's practice makes perfect. So having worked in lots of different businesses and functions, I have pretty good pattern recognition from this. So from the standpoint of having seen things before, that's been very helpful. But the other thing is I've also, from an experience standpoint, managed very complex projects that couldn't fail at the company. So, have gotten good at not approaching it without all the enabling infrastructure in place, program management and systems and software to help you, recognizing the importance of bringing in top-notch talent to help you, and really approaching it in a very disciplined, structured way. And when you do it like that, it takes real big, complicated problems and enables you to break it down into digestible pieces.
Mm-hmm. When I asked you this question in our pre-talk, what's your leadership style? One of your colleagues who was on the call, she immediately jumped in and talked about how you lead with kindness instead of fear. And and I knew that you wouldn't, you wouldn't say this about yourself because you seem to be really humble. But she also talked about your skill in guiding the staff to solve their own problems. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the way I would think about my leadership style is I'm open, inclusive, and collaborative. So let me describe what that means. Open in the sense of that I'm more than glad to take suggestions or input from anybody in the organization. Though I may have a firm view on something, if somebody is, I try to remain open to be persuaded. So if somebody brings new facts or data or perspective, stay open about that. Inclusive from the standpoint, I'm more than happy to share decision making where appropriate. I think it's a great way of developing and growing people and sharing the stage. And then collaborative, that's really part of our Idex DNA, where we think you can accomplish very often great things as a team that you can't accomplish as an individual.
She also mentioned that one of your great skills is to help people arrive at the answers as a team and ask the right questions. And so instead of telling them what to do and answering the questions for them, you really guide them down a path.
I do try to do that because I think at the end of the day, you get to a better result that you're growing and developing people in a way that when they see it, when they have had that experience and they solve a problem, they now then how to apply it to lots of other situations. So you really, I think, develop someone to a different level by doing it that way, as opposed to just prescribing or giving them a recipe.
Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of constituents. You have your employees, you have the board that you report to, you have shareholders, you have your customers. How do you spend your time with all of those different groups, and how do you prioritize it?
Right. So it can be situational depending upon what's happening at the company, but certainly, at a very high level, as a CEO, you direction set. So you spend a lot of time making sure this large, complex organization is flying in formation. Because when you're growing fast and it's very entrepreneurial, you tend to get all sorts of side projects. And speaking of projects, I make sure that, generally speaking, I'm focused on those high value, high impact projects, and to make sure that the teams are getting the support that they need, the resources that they need to be successful. And then there's just the normal type stuff that you deal with as the CEO, enterprise decision making, where somebody may be make a decision or pursuing a path that they don't necessarily appreciate all the interdependencies throughout the company. And I see that at the CEO level, and you're dealing with strategy and talent development and always thinking about the future and how to make sure from a sustainability standpoint, that you're building a great business that's going to be here for a very long time.
So it's really about finding the balance between your short term meeting your quarterly goals and then your long-term planning, right?
It is. We have a saying at IDEX, we make the day and secure the future. And the tension in the system is figuring out how to balance making the day and securing the future.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point because it is so easy just to get completely bogged down in what's in front of you. And a day can go by where you didn't think about the future. So having that discipline is essential.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of planning for the future, what is your planning horizon? Like how far are you looking out?
Well, we think the opportunity in animal health and diagnostics is multiple decades. And we've shared that with our investors that, we love our pets everywhere. They love their pets in Germany and Denmark and Japan as much as we do here in the US. And those markets are relatively less developed than they are in the US. So we think in terms of really this multi-decade runway. Now, having said that, you have to sort of take it in steps. So we have obviously an annual budget like everybody else. We have quarterly measures we're trying to achieve. But from a strategic planning standpoint, it tends to be in the 3 to 5 year time range.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so you had mentioned from a global perspective, you really see a lot of opportunity outside the U.S. Although, can we just agree that in Maine we love our pets the most of anywhere?
When I walk my dog, you can't go more than 50 yards without running into somebody else walking their dog. So I think I agree with that.
Okay, good. That's good. Good. Yeah, we're making some news here. So what's it like to be a CEO of a publicly traded company? So you report to the board. You have 11 bosses. Do you spend a lot of time prepping for board meetings? Can that be overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, it's involved. So there are 11 of us, on the board, and there's a lot of governance issues connected with running a public company. And we do have investors. So there's a lot of activity related to that, but our board is very supportive. They're very knowledgeable, about the business. And it's, the nice thing about being a public company is you get feedback on how you're doing. So you have a lot of demanding shareholders who want to be kept informed of your strategy. And there's also the quarterly discipline of reporting on how you did that quarter. So it's, I enjoy it.
Great. Good thing you enjoy it. So tell us about your pet or your pets.
So we have 2 pets, an Australian Labradoodle, Blake. He's about 7 years old. Mm-hmm. He's got a brother, a Siberian kitty, Shushu, who's about 4 years old. They're both hyperallergenic because our son has allergies. And they, like all brothers, 90% of the time they get along great, and 10% of the time they're mixing it up about something. Shushu's, I like to joke with my wife that Shushu's like a dog in training. He wants to be, he was just, if he could be reincarnated, it would be as a dog because he spends a lot of time trying to, imitate Blake.
That's awesome. So do you think it's time to poll the audience and just get the answer once and for all to that question, dogs or cats?
Let's do it.
Oh, let's settle it. Dogs or cats. So if everyone can vote, but Jay, guess what? It says host and panelists cannot vote.
Okay, I was trying to.
We can't. So, all right. So if everyone can join us, we will reveal the answer very, very soon. And now I'm going to jump to a bunch of audience questions. What is your favorite and least favorite thing about living in and doing business in Maine? And that's from Kimball Rawcliffe.
Thank you, Kim. So
wait, we just got the poll result.
That's something. Okay.
Yes, 77 dog, 23 cat. So
wow, that's amazing. So Maine is the dog capital of the world.
Yeah, because you and I had handicapped it. We thought it was going to be 60-40. So
40, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, dog lovers. All right, good to know.
Yeah, that's very much in line with my neighborhood population. So great.
And what you said too about vet visits, right?
Yeah, about 80% of vet visits are with dogs versus cats. And that's really more a function of it's hard to bring a cat to the vet. They scratch and they don't behave well.
No, no, they don't. All right, so back to our question. What is your favorite and your least favorite thing about living and doing business in Maine?
So I'll start with the living piece. So I think the Maine coastline is the absolute most beautiful coastline in the world. And I enjoy nothing better than hopping on a ferry with my family, maybe going to Chesapeake Island for lunch and a walk around. And it's just stunning. In terms of least favorite, I'd probably say maybe cell phone coverage in southern Maine, or power goes out a little too often. But not big problems. And then from a business standpoint, what's I have found most impressive is the business community is just so collaborative and supportive of each other, and they engage in the community and with government figures. And it's just been my experience that that's a little bit unusual from other places that I've lived. And so I think that's terrific. And I think the other thing that I'm going to do two things that I really like about doing business in Maine is I think generally speaking, employers recognize that people not only work, but also want to have a life, and that they're very supportive of having having a balanced work life, type situation. And that's great. In terms of least favorite, I'd say, I travel quite a bit, and I think we have a wonderful, very convenient airport that's impressive, but it doesn't go to a lot of places that I go to. So it ends up takes a long time sometimes to get from A to B.
Right, right. That is a great point, though, that you made about, and I've heard this repeatedly from many of the CEOs that we've had on Like a Boss, about the importance of supporting all of your employees, both their professional life and then also their personal life, because I think that balance just makes people, more engaged and more productive. So I can tell you from my time in Massachusetts, it was not like that. So
yeah, I mentioned I'd spent 15 years there, and I was thinking the same thing. It's more type A at work and type A outside of work.
Right, right. All right, Doug Williams asked the question, in what ways have you enabled more inclusion of minorities and women in the organizations you have led?
Sure. Like, a lot of companies back last year where there was a lot of social unrest, we paused as a company and did a pretty deep self-assessment in terms of where we are and where we wanted to be. And we felt that we could and should, do more. And, so one of the things I did is I asked my entire leadership team, the officer group of the company, to go through unconscious bias training for recruiting, promotion, and development of employees. And that's something that we're rolling out throughout the extended leadership ranks of the company. The other thing that we've done is we have a lot of community groups for employees that, from a networking and collaboration standpoints, that they feel like there's a lot of support, and so when they come in the morning to work, they can bring their authentic selves and they can do their best work. The other thing we're trying to do from a longer term outcome basis, and just to give you a little bit of context, 80% of veterinarians today graduating from veterinary school are women. So 80-20. And that's not just a US statistic, that's a global number. So the diversity of our customer base is changing pretty dramatically. So we made a number of investments. So for example, we were the inaugural member of the United Way Portland Social Equity Fund. And the other thing we announced is we created an Idex Foundation. And this was to invest in, among other things, diversity and STEM in the veterinary profession. And those are longer term outcomes-based type initiatives that we think be very important for our industry and for Idex.
I can say that whenever there's anything from a charitable perspective, whether it's the United Way or whoever it might be, Idex you're always there, and so appreciate the way that you give back to our community. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
All right, this is a two-part question. Mary Ann Schwanda asks, what is the most significant impact IDEX has had on animal health in the past 5 years? And then Craig Davis asks, what areas do you see of particular importance for IDEX over the next 5 years? So 5 years behind us, 5 years ahead of us.
Wow, they got both bookends.
They did, yeah.
In terms of over the last 5 years, I would put my finger on, we changed our go-to-market model. We completely changed our commercial model, meaning how we actually interface and how we partner with our customers. We used to work through intermediaries like distributors, and we built a direct presence with our commercial organization of subject matter experts who had the time to form partnerships with customers as trusted advisors. The benefit to that is that we can now consult as opposed to transact with customers around helping them achieve what they want to do, which is a higher standard of care. So for example, we have supported that with programs around preventive care for animals. And if you think about human health, that's something that's probably been around, the importance of preventive care, for 20 or 30 years. It's relatively newer in the animal health world. And so, the next 5 years, as I mentioned, the opportunity internationally is terrific. Not that there's not incredible runway left in the US, there certainly is, but it's relatively, I think, younger in the market development area. And so we see the opportunity to bring all the benefits of our technology and applications to everybody the world over.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So the first part, though, it sounds like wellness for pets, right? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I would say that our channel, our commercial strategy, has enabled us to introduce innovations like wellness for pets and to really partner more closely with those caregivers who can then adopt wellness and adopt other things that we bring out in the marketplace. So it's really changed, I think, the complexion of how veterinarians approach their jobs.
Right. Here's a workforce question from Brian Stam. Does IDEX struggle to recruit top talent to Maine? And how can we increase top STEM talent coming and staying in Maine?
Yeah, so we think about that in a couple of different ways. So if you think about when we recruit top talent to Maine, there's usually two groups of folks. There may be some employees or candidates who know Maine because they went to undergraduate school in Maine, or maybe it's summer camp that they attended. And so they're very fond of the state and they can't wait to get back, and they're just looking for the right job. So our focus in those cases is really on the company, the job, their career prospects, and helping to facilitate that. And then there are those candidates who don't know anything about Maine. And what we find is they may be very nervous about moving to a place that represents, in their mind, a risk. And so what we end up doing is we put a lot of investment upfront into answering the questions we know that they're going to have around quality of life, around the schools, different communities to live in, why this is a wonderful opportunity, addressing concerns they may have about their partner or trailing spouse in their career. So we try to invest as much as we can upfront in selling the state, in addition to presenting the opportunity at Idex and just what a wonderful company it is. And very often we're more successful in doing that, but you don't bat 100%.
Right.
In terms of the STEM piece, what we find works really well is an internship program. So we get young students who come to Idex internship, and we give them a really hard job. So they don't get to come and just have fun. We ask them to actually solve a problem, and they get to look at the company, and what we find is they get really intrigued by the deep science that we bring to the table, and we get a chance to look at them, and we're able in a lot of cases to convert those internships into full-time opportunities. So it's just a great way.
Yeah, that sounds like great pipeline, and also that you're really strategic and thoughtful about how to get the right people at the organization. So This is an interesting question from Daniel Copperich. How do you handle starting a senior position hired externally with many sort of entrenched direct reports with years at the company?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is go slow. Go into the company and listen, learn. Most companies have a long track record of being successful. And so you should figure out what about them, what do they do? What about the culture? What about how they approach the customer has made them successful? And so when you take the time to actually build those bridges and bring that to the table, when you want them to do something or you have a new idea, you've built that trust and credibility. And I would recommend that not just for senior jobs, but pretty much any job.
Mhm.
When you go to a new place.
Yeah, that was a very, very, very good answer. Thank you. And now we have so many questions that have been submitted in the Q&A feature that I am going to try to bang through them as quickly as possible. As a Navy veteran, are you still a sailor? That's from Patricia Cummings.
I'm not a sailor. My son is, and if he was more patient, maybe he would take the time to teach Dad how to sail. But at some point, I'm going to get back out on the water.
Yeah, plenty of opportunities to do it here for sure, right? Let's see. I feel like we answered the question about remote work after the pandemic ends. Do you think it's a model that will stick at Idex? That it's in there repeatedly. Do you have anything else you'd like to add onto that?
I think it will stick, and I don't think it's going to be a binary thing or one situation fits all. And so it'll be, I think, we've all learned that many of the things that we were doing in sort of a prior pre-COVID life, you can do differently and not lose anything. So I think all companies, IDEX included, are taking stock of all those lessons, and we're going to try to apply them in a smart way.
Mm-hmm. People have asked about Jonathan Ayers, a lot of questions about how he's doing, and is he still active in the company? He's on the board, correct?
He is on the board, so he's active in the company and he's rehabilitating and he's doing well. Thank you for the concern.
Can you talk more about the other parts of IDEX, your livestock, water, and well, you already talked about the human COVID testing, but about the other sort of non-core pet parts of your business?
Sure. So we have a livestock, poultry, and dairy business. In fact, that was sort of the original core of the company's founding in poultry. And we have a water microbiology testing business. We actually test 2 billion times a year plus in water, so drinking water. And those are very important businesses for us. They rely on similar technologies that we have in, as the companion animal testing. And in fact, the livestock, poultry, and dairy business is really more of an international business for us to keep herds, safe and prevent disease, or at least monitor if disease breaks out.
Steve Smith from LL Bean has a question. Seems a little self-serving. He wants to know what your favorite outdoor activity is. It better not be cross-country skiing, because I don't think you can get any right now.
Yeah, so I took up golf again this year after a hiatus of a while, and it's been great to just get out and do that. I like biking and hiking, and Steve, we've been to many of your outdoor schools. They're wonderful. So I'm going to put a plug in for those folks who, I think it's called Outdoor Discovery Schools.
It is indeed. Yeah. So maybe LL Bean should get into golf, and I have taken up pickleball. So if they want to get into the pickleball market, that's a growing business. But so I feel like you've answered a lot of these. Any interesting global trends in your industry you can comment on?
Well, just as I was mentioning that, the world over, in really all the markets, people love their pets, and we continue to see a great opportunity, for that, and it's a big area of focus for us as a company.
Tim Harmon wants to know what your favorite restaurant is and what book are you reading right now?
Okay, so my favorite restaurant is Emalitza. So if you like country Greek food, That's
Yeah.
a fabulous place to go. But there's so many great restaurants. I don't want to just single out one. And I'm reading. I got for Christmas a book called A Maine Hamlet, which is about old time Maine in the 1890s, and it's about a town called Marshfield, Maine. And it's sort of folksy, and I'm just a couple of chapters into it right now, so I can't tell you how it ends, but it's wonderful and I would recommend it.
Great. George Casey wants to know, what did you learn about yourself as you navigated this past year?
Wow, that's a good question. I think COVID's been a leadership crucible for all of us, independent of what level you're at within your own organization. So, it's taught me just renewed levels of resilience and agility, and you don't know where the curveballs are going to come from. So I'd say, you sort of get used to expecting the unexpected and going with it. And those things that you can shape, you shape, and those things that you have to accept, you accept. So maybe a little more patience.
Yeah, well, I think that flows right into this next question from Jessica Simpson. It doesn't seem like you worry much. Is that true? Can you be a successful CEO if you let things get to you or get you down?
Well, I do tend to sleep well, but that's not to say I don't worry. So for example, when COVID hit and we have 9,000 employees and you have to wake up and say, how do we keep those employees safe? How do we keep our facilities, safe? I tend to translate anxiety and worry into action. And so that's my salve, if you will. When you're making progress on something, I feel like this positive energy and momentum, and I'm converting anxiety into something productive.
So what is it then that would keep you up at night?
Oh, I mean, it's situational. After we figured out, just to give you just a very practical example, how to keep our employees and facilities safe, then focused on customers and how to supply them when a lot of customers, shut down for 2 or 3 weeks, and figuring out how to change their workflows and curbside patient drop off and pick up. And then we have all these vendors that they in turn, maybe shutting down or maybe struggling. So it sort of shifts depending upon what's happening. As I said, CEO is a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's like there's no start and stop button.
Right. And I just know from my own experience that what you think you're going to accomplish in one day is like good luck, because you never know what's going to get thrown at you. So you've got to be nimble. A question from Chris Muse: can you advise how small companies can contact IDEX to develop working partnerships around leadership development and team building? So you must get this question a lot because your culture is admired by so many. Do you ever think about how to help people with that?
We do that all the time. We have a great, leading edge HR team, and they work a lot with the local community and partner companies, sharing best practices. And by the way, we think we can learn a lot from other companies too. So if you provide contact information to me, I'll make sure I get it to the right people.
Great. This is an interesting question from Brenda Andreessen. Pet healthcare aside, from your perspective as the leader of a company that has become integral to the success of veterinary professionals, what do you appreciate most about vets and what concerns you the most?
Yeah, so I think, veterinarians are very altruistic. They could make, if you know anything about veterinary school, it's very hard to get into. It's as hard to get into veterinary university or college as it is medical school for, on the human side. And so they get in because they love animals and they're very focused, and they don't make anywhere near as much money as human doctors do. And so I think, it's truly a passion of love, and they have shown incredible dedication. And what I worry about is, and we see this trend is, there's a lot of fatigue and burnout, and the suicide rate is very high because you're dealing with compassion fatigue, and there's a lot of euthanasias. And so it's very hard for them. And so what we try to do as a company and as an industry is support the veterinarian, because they're the anchor, they're the linchpin of caring for the dogs and cats that we love so much.
Wow, that's remarkable that the way you think about your empathy and compassion for them, which I never realized was part of what comes with that profession. So, a great question. A pragmatic question: will you be continuing your summer internship program this year? Because who knows when we're all going to be back to work.
Yeah, I think we will. It'll be at a less sort of less broad basis. We can do those internships that involve being able to do virtually, make a lot more sense to be able to hire those folks. But those positions or internships where you have to actually come onto site and work
Right.
with other people, those are more challenging, obviously. So in a reduced form, but it's something that is very important part of how we end up recruiting, especially STEM, into the company.
For sure. Well, we're almost right at 2 o'clock. I'm sorry that we didn't get to all the questions, Jay. Not only do you hold the record for most registered attendees, but you hold the question for most, the record for most questions submitted. So my apologies that we couldn't get to all of them, but maybe we can capture them and get them to you, and it might be able
you have to invite me back in 2022.
Oh, well, we would be happy to do that. Now, my favorite reporter question, even though I'm not obviously a journalist, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
I think you covered them all.
Okay, great. Well, I had so much great help from all the people that joined us today. Thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time and your insight, and we're so thankful to have you at the helm at Idex as one of Maine's top employers and doing such important work for people and our beloved pets.
Thank you. I would like to just make a quick call out to all the Idex employees, all 9,000 of them. They're just an incredible group of employees, and it's amazing to be the leader of a company where there's just such passion and talent. And I just couldn't be more proud of what we've accomplished.
That's fantastic. So thank you. And thank you so much for everyone joining us here on this sunny Friday afternoon. I hope you continue to stay safe, mask up, but get outside and enjoy Maine's beautiful outdoors. We will be back together on Friday, March 12th, when my guest will be the president of the University of Maine, Joan Farini Mundy. So we're going to ask her questions about STEM and engineering programs and how to build that pipeline for Idex. So we look forward to seeing you virtually then, and everyone have a great weekend. Thank you again to all of our sponsors, and thank you, Jay, for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.